Welcome to the Hacking Your Health podcast with Ben Canning and Dave Kennedy. Two guys heading out to hack body, mind, business, and beyond. We are here to provide a single source, bullshit-free guide to understanding your body and how you can live better for longer.
Before we get into this week's episode, I actually would like to take a minute to introduce and thank in advance our guest. This week we're joined by Ciara McCullough at the Mindset Coach IRL. Ciara spoke at Matt's Get Shit Done Day in Edinburgh a few weeks back, and I knew I had to have a further conversation with her and how I could bring her in to help and educate the people that I work with, and I knew that they would benefit from the stuff that she had to say. We decided that it would probably be better to initially do a podcast so that everybody who listens could get the benefit from her knowledge and her story and on what she does and what she does for her clients. I would highly recommend listening all the way to the end in this episode. And if you feel like there's somebody that would benefit from listening to this, please feel free to share, tag, social media, throw it about, whatever you need to do with it to get it out there. I think this will be a massively beneficial episode for everybody to listen to. Now, let's get into it. Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back. I'm Ben Canning.
I'm Dave Kennedy.
Is this my cue? I'm Ciara McCullough.
Yes, that's it. Good, we nailed it. Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Ciara. As I said, we don't really have much structure or format. Essentially, today, I would like you to talk about you and what you do. So if you feel free to introduce yourself, and then we'll go from there.
Amazing. It's always one of those things where you're like, oh, who are you? It's the existential question.
Who is this person?
I'm on that journey. I'm still trying to figure out who I am. But who I am is, my name is Ciara McCullough. And what I do is I help people harness the power of their minds so they can use it to their advantage in life. Because a lot of the time people have a certain type of mindset or a certain type of set of beliefs that just aren't serving them anymore. So one of the things that I do is I come in and I help people literally start to restructure their beliefs, their mindset, but more importantly, helping them understand how their mind works so that they can better understand it and hack it, to use your kind of wording.
Nice. In
a way that actually better serves them, right? So like I want them to understand that their brain and their mind can actually work for them. And when that happens, it's fucking incredible. But to skip back through I'm a coach with lived experience. So for me, I'm coming at my work and what I do from a real place of empathy and understanding, because I didn't always have the best mindset and I didn't always have a mindset that supported me. It was quite the opposite, actually, in fact. So whenever I'm introducing myself, one of the things that I always like to start off with is I'm a best friend to myself. So my name is Ciara and I'm my best friend. Sounds really fucking cheesy, because it is, but for me to be the best possible coach I can be, for me to be the best possible mother, parent, partner, friend, daughter, whatever other title that we tend to give ourselves, it has to come from me being the best friend to myself first and supporting myself through my mindset, through my physical work, through everything that I do. That's why I always start with that. And I've worked really fucking hard at that for the last however long, 10, 15 years. So I'm really glad that I can safely say that I am the best friend to myself, but it wasn't always like that. So go in whatever direction you want with that.
There's some powerful messages in there for sure that we can break down. But I think, we talk about Ben has his pillars, and mindset being one of the most critical there. You can't have the success with yourself unless you believe in yourself. You kind of change the patterns of behavior that you're currently doing that have caused you to go into those different areas. And that's really the struggle, especially in health and fitness, that we, typically see is, most folks really get into this bad mindset, day-to-day cycles, can't break it. And, I think, loving yourself and having a friendship with yourself is probably the most important step about it, right?
100%. Because like I said, when I look back on my own journey, like I wasn't always my best friend, and I know the impact of that, and I know the depths in which that can go, and it's a scary place for me. So for me, I posted the post the other day. I know what it's like to actually want to give up. And now I'm starting to live my life in actually, what would my life look like if I just don't give up? And that starts with not giving up on myself first. And there's a lot of kind of pillars around that, but essentially it's coming back to how are you speaking to yourself and what is the relationship that you have with yourself and how are you narrating with yourself? Because that's the fundamental aspect to everything.
Yeah, and I think that, I guess you may be the same, like the more I delve into every aspect or every conversation we have, the more that the different things are intertwined. And obviously, you know, Matt and I were at the Jocko event last week, and obviously his thing's about ownership. So exactly what you're saying, like you taking ownership of that relationship with yourself is exactly what he preaches as well. So everything's sort of intertwined. Everybody's message is sort of trending in the right direction.
Radical responsibility is something I talk about a lot. And for me, that moment of radical responsibility actually came from me actually lying on a hospital bed after the third attempt to end my life. So I was able to make a decision, and that was one of the most powerful kind of pivotal moments in my life, where lying on a hospital bed after the third attempt to end my life and sitting there going, right, you've got two options. You can keep going the way that you're going, not talking, not opening up, not asking for help, not doing the stuff that is equivalent to you being your best friend, or you could actually do the opposite. And one of the most powerful things happened for me there is that moment of radical responsibility came because I realized for the very first time in my fucking life that I had a choice. I actually have a choice here, and what direction and what choice am I going to choose? And from that very moment on, I literally made a decision, and it seems so simple, but it was coming from the depths of me, like being my own worst enemy. I decided to be like, what would my life look like if I did the opposite of what I was doing? And that sounds very simple in theory, but there's a lot of work to that. But for me, that the radical responsibility came in as a massive part to play in my life. And every day and every moment, I'm like, does this decision that I'm going to make align with who I want to be? Does it align with where I want to go? Does it align with my health? Does it align with this? And that's the type of questioning, because as human beings, what we tend to do is question ourselves a lot. But we actually question ourselves in a way that doesn't serve us. What's wrong with me? Why am I always like this? Why do I always have to feel like this? When I work with my clients, don't actually get them to change the questioning themselves. I just get them to change how they do it. So instead of questioning themselves on what's wrong with me? Why am I always like this? It's like, well, what's that one action I can take right now? How do I want to feel? Different types of questions give you different types of answers. Different types of answers give you different types of options and put you back on, either keep you stuck or put you back on the driver's seat of your life.
First of all, there's a lot to unpack there. Wow. Amazing story. And
Thank you.
Amazing that you were able to come out of, that type of situation and come out strong and help others, I think is the most important piece about that. Right. Mm-hmm. I think you see a lot of folks that hit certain rock bottom parts in their life. They do have a choice at that point, right? Do they continue to do the same thing that they're doing that is causing the issues, the self-talk, whatever it ends up being, or do you make a catastrophic change to make yourself better? And, I think you see that a lot in, you look at like Alcoholics Anonymous, you look at it at a lot of the different programs that are structured to, find higher purpose and meaning in life. There's a lot of studies now on, psilocybin and psychedelics for helping and fixing depression. But, you look at, that type of situation for me, I was in a very similar, not similar situation, but I had hit rock bottom where my health was declining and I had to have heart surgery. And the doctor basically said to me, you're not going to be around for your kids unless you make a change. And, that was kind of the epiphany of like, hey, do I keep eating and doing the things that I'm doing and just working, 15 hours a day and killing myself, not looking at my family and my longevity and do I make a change? And that's when I kind of, made the plunge there. But you get to coach a lot of different people in different spots and places, from all ranges. What's kind of some of the key common things that you see that helps people start off with a different mindset? And, first of all, I'm a huge advocate of having a support system, a coach, a community, a group of people that can relate with you. I think the success factor substantially goes up. Yeah. I know as soon as I joined with Ben, my success factor substantially went up. But the community aspects, the people, the sharing, the ability to work through problems. Like I think you need people around you that understand that struggle. I think it's important. But what are some common ways that people can start to make a change in their mindset, whether it's for health and fitness, whether it's for, depression, whether it's for, trying to, change something in their life that isn't going well? what's kind of the starting point for folks that may not be able to do that?
For me, one of the things that I always say is that we cannot change what we don't understand. So from that stepping point, I always work with my clients on like the fundamentals of how your mindset works. And I'm going to share it with you now because it's kind of like a 3-step process in how I see it. We have what's called a negativity bias, which means that our mind is built to protect us. It's built for our survival. So every decision that we inherently make that's automatic, that's fast, that's going to be our primitive first decision that we'll always make on anything, will always be survival first. Will always be will always be like the easiest choice, the most comfortable choice, the choice that actually keeps us the safest, i.e. in the spot that we're currently in, right? So within that, negativity bias is we're hardwired to seek the negative as a survival tactic. We're hardwired to hold on to the negative. We're hardwired to seek it. We're hardwired to just see it show up in every aspect. 3 times quicker and 3 times longer in terms of holding on to it than the positive. So what does that mean? If we don't understand that that's a hardwiring of how our mind works, we always tend to say, well, I'm just a negative person. Why do I always think in a negative way? You're not a negative person. We're just hardwired to see it. First thing. When we don't understand that, the second thing that happens, we have what's called confirmation bias, right? Which means that our mind is consistently always looking for evidence to support what we're saying to ourselves. And if we don't have an understanding of our negativity bias, majority of our thoughts are going to be negative. Majority of the time, we're not going to be conscious of what thoughts are coming in. So therefore, we don't take much action on replacing them and making sure that they're empowering. So what's happening in that sense is we have negativity bias, and as a result of that, confirmation bias is coming in to reinforce that and give you a whole ton of fucking evidence. So let me replay that back to my life. I had this fundamental, like I suppose how I spoke to myself was along the lines of, I'm not good enough. That was the statement that I had. And by fuck did I see the evidence. Like it stacked up, and it stacked up for years. And what happens as a result of that is the more evidence that you see, the more you start to believe it, the more it starts to become true, the more you start to be like, well, this is just who I am. And ultimately what happened for me was like, I'm fundamentally flawed and there's something wrong with me, I'm broken. So that became a true belief of mine because of the evidence that I saw. The reason that became powerful, and I could see nothing else other than the fact that I was not good enough, was not because I was broken, was not because there was something wrong or there was a malfunction in my brain, actually because of the third step. The more evidence we find, the more we start to believe it. And when we start to believe something, we activate what's called our reticular activating system, right? The most powerful part of our mind. What the reticular activating system does is it takes what we believe and it shuts down any information that contradicts that belief. So if I have a true belief about myself that I'm not good enough, that I am worthless, that I have no value, it is like a magnet. The reticular activating system, its job is to conserve energy for our mind. How it does that is it shuts down any information that contradicts our belief. We don't actually take it in. So I never saw my successes. I never saw my achievements. I never saw reasons as to why I was good enough. That, to me, having that understanding of how our mind works, my clients usually be like, all right, okay, I understand this now. Maybe I'm not so much of a negative person. And how we do that and how we start to hack that, right? And we reverse engineer it. So if our beliefs are caused by evidence that we have seen, we need to now start providing new evidence for our new empowering mindset that we want to have. So come back to my journey. I wanted to literally stop believing that I was not good enough. I wanted to start believing that I was enough and that I had worth as a human being and I had value. How did I do that? I focused on the middle piece. I focused on helping confirmation bias see more evidence. So I started to gear my mind towards literally starting to see more evidence. And how I did that, every night before I went to sleep, it took me 5 minutes. I used to write down 3 ways or reasons I'm proud of myself. Sounds really fucking simple. How often do we do it? We don't. But the simple act of spending 5 minutes before you go to sleep to check in with yourself and give yourself a fucking pat on the back and actually just reward yourself in terms of encouragement. What you are also doing is acknowledging yourself, reassuring yourself, supporting yourself, but giving your confirmation bias evidence. Okay? And as a result of that, what happens is the more evidence that you give, slowly you'll start to believe it. And let me be living proof that your mind is very, very malleable and it can be changed at any point. What our brains love is repetition. So we need to lean into the power of repetition. The more that we repeatedly say something, the more it becomes who we are. We hear that all the time. Why does that happen? Because we start to see evidence for it. You can imagine your brain is like a magnet. So the words that you're using for yourself, how you're speaking to yourself, how you're narrating with yourself, become a magnet for actually what you become and who you become. So that's like fundamental number one. The second thing that I always talk to with my clients straight away when they come in is essentially that we have what's called a feedback loop in our brain. Okay, which means that our brain wants perfect alignment between three components: our thoughts, our actions, and our emotions. Now, when we don't understand this, when we're not aware of this, our brain typically has been run by the strongest element, which usually is our emotions. You wake up, you feel a certain way, so let's say motivated, your day goes absolutely incredible. You're more inclined to get your shit done, you're more inclined to have good conversations with people, you just feel buzzed up for the day. But on the days where you don't feel motivated when you wake up, what happens? Why do I always feel like this? What's wrong with me? Why can't I just be motivated? Again, the thoughts come into play. And as a result of the thoughts and now the emotions being strong, we're not really inclined to want to get up. We press the snooze and then we're rushing throughout our day, and it's just a bit of a clusterfuck. So what on both of those occasions, it was our emotions driving our feedback loop. So what I always want to give my clients is an understanding of, let your action dictate how you want to feel. So what I do for myself and what my clients do, simple again, at the start of every day, how do I want to feel today? Sounds very simple.
It seems so simple, but yet.
Yeah. But how often do we do it? We don't.
Never. We don't.
So every single day, if you were to ask me what's a couple of things I do for myself that keeps me so well and keeps my clients so well. I start in the morning, irregardless of how I wake up. And I do still experience anxiety. I do still feel unmotivated. I feel all those emotions as well. No matter how I wake up, I ask myself, how do I want to feel today? I pick 3 emotions and I pick 3 actions that will help me, I suppose, drive the needle towards those emotions to create that. Now, what that's doing is putting a focus on what is the plan for the day? How can I put myself first? Right? How can I be my own best friend here? This is how I want to feel, and these are the actions I'm going to take. If we look at the majority of people that come to me want to feel more confident. To tie in with this, the quickest way to build self-confidence is to build self-trust. Right? The quickest way to build self-trust is keeping the promises that you make to yourself. So you are starting your day by making small promises to yourself in accordance to how you want to feel. You're starting to align your actions to them. So now you're becoming more alignment with who you want to be and how you want to feel. Now you're hacking your feedback loop to work for you. Because when you take that action, your actions are the strongest force, which naturally align your emotions and your thoughts too. So all of it sounds very simple, but it's just putting it into practice.
It's interesting. What you're explaining is from a parallelism perspective in when you get into a fitness routine is almost the exact same thing, but different, right? Routine, repetition, teaching your mind that it's okay to do this and to stop fighting it and to focus on it, right? As a thing for our survival or for our well-being or for having the mindset of going and doing it. And, I think, when I remember, years ago when I was going to the gym, like in the car, I'm like just dreading it. Like in my day just sucked, right? It's just like, oh, I got to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I got to go to the gym. This sucks. You sit in the car for like an extra 10 minutes, like, okay, it's time for me to go. Whereas you look at today, I can't wait to get to the gym, right? I can't, like when Ben tells me
out of the
gym. Ben's like, listen, do not go to the gym today. You need a rest day. I'm like, listen, I'm at the gym right now. I'm sorry. Like it's too late. So, it's weird how that mind shift really, once it happens. And it's funny because I try to explain it to people. Like there was actually like a day I remember when it happened. It was like, I was going to the gym, like going through the cycles and going through the cycles. And all of a sudden it's just like, my mind's like, all right, I got to go to the gym. Like it was just second nature to me, right? At that point in time, it's like, it's just part of my day that I have to go and do. But it's funny you mentioned, because yesterday I had like a really crummy day. It was just back to back meetings. And there were just like a lot of stuff going on. I was getting nailed from a bunch of people texting and calling. And I was just, it was just a frantic day. And I remember going home and my son was like, hey, can you take me to basketball practice? I had just gotten home like 5 minutes before and I was still on the phone. I still had a half hour of calls to go. And I'm like, dude, I cannot take you right now. And I was just not in a great mood. I was like, I need like a half hour to decompress. But like, I look at my day today and I'm like, hey, it's a great day because, one, I got a podcast, I get to talk to you awesome folks, but, it's not as busy because I haven't had to go through it. So it's our minds can definitely control how we feel, how we interact with people, and how we, perceive our days and our lives. It's such a powerful tool that, a primitive brain making the decisions is, usually not the best course. I mean, it's fight or flight in most cases. Yes or no, instinctive based on what we've learned. But, the analytical part of it that, we need to tap into is the one that we really have to change, and to have it, really focus on changing our patterns of behavior.
And I think when it comes to changing our behavior, there's two things that come into play. A lot of the time, and I think you mentioned this, is when we go to make change, right? If we take my scenario, lying on a hospital bed, like feeling the lowest of lows, my perception and my belief about having to change my life and change how I felt was, I thought that it needed to be this absolutely 360 complete overhaul, and it was going to be really overwhelming. So what that happens is that triggers the fight or flight. That triggers our primitive brain to be like, well, that's overwhelming. Why bother?
Yes.
Because you're currently okay.
Yeah. Man.
Right? So that was the first thing. We have to understand that our brains are resistant to change. That's how they're hardwired, because they're wired for certainty, because certainty means safety and security. So that's how they're wired. So when we go to make change, even when it's fucking positive change, our brain is like, hold on a second. We're not doing this because this requires a new level of thinking, a new level of behavior, a new level of just doing different things. And I don't want to do that, essentially, because there's uncertainty within that. So anything that we step into that has an element of uncertainty, we have to understand that primitive brain is going to be like, to fuck you are, come back down, right? So within that, understanding that, I think if anybody was to take anything else away from this podcast, or nothing else away from this podcast,
so
only
important.
The fact that we have a primitive brain that will always, when we go to the edge of anything, the edge of greatness, the edge of just taking that jump, the edge of just doing kind of like, I suppose, a healthy regime that you haven't done in a while, anything that's new, anything that's unfamiliar, anything that's uncomfortable, but we know logically it's going to be good for us, brain will always be like, no, we're not doing that, because that's not what we know, that's not what is familiar. Familiar to me in my life was being my own worst enemy, was beating myself up, was literally starting to be the absolute worst enemy to me in how I spoke to myself. That was my familiar. So when I went to change that, I got a lot of resistance for it in terms of like the relationship I had with myself and how my mind was worked. When you can, and this goes for how you hack your mindset and how you hack your health, everything that you do new, you have to understand that your brain will have resistance to it. But if you can get past that, and this is kind of like the comfort zone, fear zone, learning zone, growth zone type model, we have to know that when we're doing something new, we're in fear zone. And the job of the fear zone, i.e. the inner critic, i.e. that really shitty voice, i.e. all of the thoughts that come in to tell you that you're not good enough and that you're going to fail and everyone's going to laugh, what are people going to think? The job of all that is to bring you back into what's known. But you have to audit what's known. Is known to me actually not really a nice place? That's where I want to get away from. So sitting in that fear and knowing that actually, okay, I'm going to have to lean into this resistance here for a little while, guess what happens? You learn and you grow. And when you learn and you grow, your comfort zone expands to this new comfortable place of, actually now I've just hacked my brain to work for me. So the resistance is always going to be there.
I think the thing that I see, to sort of relate this back in terms of like what you're saying about whenever people have a certain thought process about themselves, generally if I'm on a call with someone and they've tried, Dave as an example has tried every diet under the sun, like has done it before, has failed at them all. So his thought process is this just going to be something, another thing that I fail at? And what is why is this time going to be different? And I think the bit that Dave's talking about there, whenever you have that thought process of the day that it changes, it's whenever it becomes you're doing the thing because of the goal that you want. And I think we spoke about this when we talked a couple of weeks ago. It then becomes part of your identity, that you are the person that does the thing.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And the identity is huge, because when we set goals, we always go from the outside in. So let's say, for example, in the fitness space, it might be client comes to you, they say they want to get stronger, get leaner. Why? So we need to understand the why, right? Well, I'll be more confident and I'll finally feel whatever it is, right? And within that, we're having, this is the outcome, right? So that's the first kind of layer of the onion to how we set goals, typically from the outside in. This is the outcome, get stronger, get leaner. this is the process, this is what we need to do. And then it's like, okay, well, what's the identity piece then? So within that, that's the core piece that we forget about and we don't really usually see until the end. But if we start working from the inside out, what is it that you want to believe about yourself? How do you want to feel? How do you want to feel within yourself? What are the words that you want to use? So what's your identity essentially? And when you start taking action, not for your outcome, which is a bit of a contradiction here, not for your outcome, but for your identity, that's where shit changes. And that's where you can start making better decisions. That's where the decisions become a lot easier because you know your why. And your why is, well, I'm building this new identity. So now you can start to ask yourself questions like, is this decision that I'm about to make in alignment with being confident? Is it my decision aligned with being stronger, leaner? If the answer is no, that's where we exercise the kind of art of discipline. It's kind of knowing that this decision isn't going to impact me in a way that serves me. This is the vote for you planting a seed of being your best friend.
You know, what's really interesting about the identity concept here, for me is, you know, my wife will always say when I go into something, I go all in, and it essentially becomes my identity.
I can agree with your wife. Ben. I could absolutely agree.
But here's your sister. I agree. I'm with you here.
It's very true. But, you know, if you look at, you know, my life, you know, when I was a Marine, I was all in on that, right? And I was all about the Marines. And when I got out, I was all about my career and being in security and releasing tools and just busting my butt to be that person and that persona and that identity of being a really good hacker and all this other stuff, right? And then, you know, same thing on the fitness side. You know, when I got into that and my identity changed to want to focus on my health, my longevity, strength, you know, muscle gain, everything about that became my identity, right? You know, how I work out, what I talk about, what I eat, what I focus on, it all became part of who I am as a person because essentially it was a new trait, right? And I want to hit on what Ben said there about the self-doubt component, you know, especially in your side of the house when you're dealing with folks that are extremely fragile from a mindset perspective, that are coming from rock bottom. Ben obviously does as well. You know, there's a lot of bad advice that you see online and from personal trainers and from, you know, mindset coaches and things to that effect where, you know, if you get the wrong type of person, it can really thrust you into an even worse situation than before. And that was actually my biggest fear when I went with Bennett the first time. I was like, listen, you know, I've tried everything. You know, if I fail at this is pretty much my last ditch effort, you know, and then I'm just going to, you know, assume that it's just something that I can't fix. Right. And I think so many people have tried so many different things, but the one point that you hit on around doing things in a small nature over time based on your identity and kind of building on that, you know, I think has a high level of success because I think, you know, you look at these crash diets, you look at, you know, I'm going to go to the gym 30 times a week. I'm going to go and, you know, I'm only going to eat 200 calories and I'm going to run 700 miles. You know, they're not, you know, sustainable goals that will change your identity. It's, in fact, it's going to teach your brain that type of stuff is horrible for you. You know, you're starving yourself and your body's starting to shut down and you can't handle the amount of change that's going on in your life. So it really has to be, you know, hey, my identity is I want to be fit down the road. I don't know when that is, but I need to start doing small things now to get there, whether that's just getting in steps and walking outside, whether it's getting my nutrition under control, you know, gradually over time. It's not eating broccoli and cheese or, you know, broccoli and, you know, chicken all day long. It's, you know, hey, I'm going to start, you know, curbing down maybe the sugars I intake and just start counting my calories to understand where I'm at. These small fundamental changes have massive impact long-term. I mean, just, you know, Ben has suggested many times in his great book, the Atomic Habits book, about doing small things that have a large breadth of return in the end. And it's, you know, the 1% better every day eventually equates to a substantial amount down the future. So on the mindset front, how do you get people into a routine? You know, you mentioned these are easy things to do, you know, and they are, you know, hey, how do I want to feel today? Well, I want to feel awesome. It's going to be an amazing day. You know, just telling myself that in the morning, I can already see would have a resonating impact on it, but it's getting into those habits of reinforcing that day in and day out. So you teach yourself that is something that you have to do. How do you get people into kind of a system to be, you know, one, accountable for that, but two, change their habits so that it sticks with them long term?
I think one of the things is when we think and talk about the atomic habits, 1% better every day. Now, for anybody who's at rock bottom, actually 1% better is actually really overwhelming because I'm like, I can't even get 0.5%, you know. So, and I don't just coach people who are at rock bottom. It's like a whole range of people, but for really making a change at that point. And what I actually always do is consistency. And this comes back to, how can I just show up for myself today in a way that I didn't do yesterday? And it's not about being better. It's just about, how can I show up? So if I spent all day yesterday, not like, I suppose, speaking to myself in a really powerful way, if I didn't move at all yesterday, if I, let me audit yesterday, and what's one little thing that I can do to show up in a different way for myself. Now, what we're very heavy on in the Mindset Academy is self-trust. So every day what we do is, when people are starting out with me first, again, the accountability of having a coach is really, really important, okay? Because I hold my clients really accountable. Because when we're starting out, if we can start to build that level of self-trust back up, and let me explain this. My clients have usually experienced what it's like to make promises to themselves and not follow through, okay? And as a result of that, they're coming to me with a lack of confidence, a lack of self-belief, just really starting to berate themselves and not being their own best friend. Now, when we look at that, if I was to switch that for, let's say, yourself and Ben. So say you said to Ben, hey, I need your, and this is just as a friend, not as a coach, I need your help because I feel like I'm just like not feeling myself. I just really love a little bit of accountability, right? And he's like, okay, hey, what do you need? And you're like, okay, I just need to go out walking on a Wednesday and a Friday. Can you help? Yeah, sure, I'll come with you. I'll hold you accountable, right? So you have a great level of trust in Ben. When Wednesday comes and you're there and you're ready, and then Ben doesn't show up. Now, for the first time, you might go, okay, maybe Ben got busy. That's okay. But if it happens a couple of times in a row, you start to really lose a little bit of trust in him. Is that right?
100%. Yeah. And Ben doesn't show up all the time. No, just kidding. Ben is always there. No, and that's actually something I really, appreciated up front is Ben was always available for me, especially as, you had mentioned the speak to yourself, the what you tell yourself, right? And early on, I definitely had negative speaking myself, like, hey, I'm not doing this, I'm failing at this, or I'm not doing this properly, or, I remember I've mentioned this in the podcast before, but I was, I've been really strict with my macros, counting exactly and making sure that I'm hitting my protein goals. And there was a moment of weakness where I went over for a poker night and I had a bunch of, I had 2 pizzas, which I think put me over like 600 calories or something like that. And, the next day I'm like, Ben, I just totally screwed up, 7 months of training. I'm back to Fat Dave again. And, this is who I am now. I'm back to, and having somebody, a bouncing board there saying, dude, one day is not a big deal. Like, look at all the progress you've made. You're doing great. Do you want to even hop, do you want to hop back? I'm like, yeah, I already did. I'm already back to my normal routine. He's like, well, are you really back to Dave again? That old Dave again? No. So, that person to help you, keep motivated, I think is so important.
Yeah.
And having a community that shares the same is also really important, right?
And take that, right? And the example that I was kind of leading towards there was, when we make promises to ourselves and we don't follow through, we break the trust with ourselves. Much like if Ben just didn't show up at those times, you'd lose trust in him and you'd lose confidence in him and you wouldn't ask him anymore. Maybe you start to speak negatively about him, right? So this is the relationship that we have with ourselves all of the time. So what happens is that when we're in this space, right, of not feeling our best, we're being really negative towards ourselves, we have this all or nothing approach. We either need to change everything full 360 or we don't at all. So much like your case, I either stay clean eating all of the time, and that one time I kind of maybe mess up, I'm back to Fat Dave again. Well, actually, no, that's not the case. That's just your all or nothing mindset coming in to try and hinder you because it's reinforcing an old program, right? So within this, it's looking at how can we break this down? So the question that you asked was like, how do we start off with just really putting ourselves back on the driver's seat of our lives? It's keeping it small promises that we make to ourselves on a daily basis. Within that, making it small, being consistent with it and putting yourself back in that space really starts to help you develop self-trust. And as a result of that, you start to have self-respect and you start to take yourself a lot seriously again. And that's building the identity of, I've got my own back. And it's a very powerful place to be.
Well, I think the question I have for you, maybe to put you on the spot, number one, obviously going from making that initial choice of where you're at in your hospital bed, like what was the process from that to where you are now? And to go back to what you're saying about just writing down the things you're proud of, what are the 3 most things you're proud of between then and now?
Oh, how long have we got for that one? 3. Okay, so one of the things that if I go back to that moment on the hospital bed, all along, so this was the 3rd attempt in my life. So there had been 2 attempts prior to this. Both of those occasions, I was given the help. Both of those occasions, I was given all of the solutions. I was told, here's what you need to do. And actually, I didn't do it for me. And this is really, really important. I did it for my family. I did it for my friends. I did it for everybody else except for myself. So essentially, when I went in to speak to a counselor, to speak to a therapist, to speak to anybody that kind of were trying to help me, I just told them what I thought that they wanted to hear. Right? So I didn't go into how I actually felt because I wasn't really doing it for myself because I still didn't believe that I was worth it. The moment that changed the game for my life was the moment I decided to do it for myself. And that's where the radical responsibility comes from nobody else other than me. And the question that you asked there of like, what is that moment? From there, I kept making decisions for myself. Does this help me? Does this support me? Right? Not thinking about anybody else. And that sounds a little bit like when people hear that, like, oh, it's a little bit selfish. No, it's not. Because the more selfish I can be, the more I can actually give to other people. And that's the new narrative that I have as a result of that. But it came from, I want to do this for myself. I want to see what my life is going to be like if I actually do the opposite of what I'm currently doing. So to what are the 3 things that I'm most proud of to date? Honestly, the very first one I started off with by saying this is becoming my own best friend. And that is something that is always going to be the first thing that I'll always be proud of. And it sounds cheesy as fuck, but fundamentally, I know that my life is always going to be a success. No matter what I do, no matter how many times I fail, no matter what happens in my life, I always have myself. And that is a very, very fucking epic place to be because it's just a really, really steady foundation that I have with myself. So I'm most proud of that. The second thing I'm most proud of is just my wife and baby May is like essentially like really, really just having that family, and that's just, I suppose, creating that. And thirdly, what I'm most proud of is helping people. Like when I was younger, I was told that I was too much a lot. You care too much, you think too much, you care too much. And now look at what caring too much is able to afford me. Caring too much actually is my job. And caring too much allows me to be the coach that I am, allows me to give a shit about people on a much deeper level. So what I would have seen as a weakness before, I now see as a superpower and my strength, and I'm really proud of that. And I can use that strength to really help other people. So I'm glad that I care too much. And it's something that I would have rejected in myself so often that now I'm really, really proud of. Yeah, good question. Got me thinking.
I want to unpack something there on the selfishness side, because I do hear that a lot, where you hear a lot of folks that are like, I can't commit to changing my lifestyle because that's selfish of me wanting to spend time with myself, right? And away from my family or not. When, at the end of the day, if you're living a happier, healthier, more fruitful lifestyle that we were designed to do, by the way, millions of years of evolution, it's not selfish, because at the end of the day, your family is going to reap the benefits of that reward. You mentioned your confidence around, you will be successful. Very same mindset. I started my own business in the basement of my house, and I had a perfectly good job that, was a cushion for me. And I literally had to worry about nothing. I had job stability. I had 3 kids, we were doing well. But I said, listen, I believe in myself. I know I'll be successful. I have a great support system at home. I'm going to leave my perfectly great job and start my own company because I know it's the right thing for me to do. Yep. Right. And that paid off tenfold. Right. Cause now I've 2 fantastic companies and, amazing folks that work with me. And it's that confidence in yourself that I think a lot of people lack. And it's changing that mindset to say, hey, it's okay to spend time on my mental health. It's okay to spend time, for me to have my own time to go out with friends or to do this or to do that. It's not selfish, because at the end of the day, our minds need that positive reinforcement. They need the care and nurturing to make sure that we're healthy in general. It's not always about, the things that get us into a cyclical effect. And I think we, humans, we make conflict out of anything, right? It's that primitive brain side, right? And we live amazing lives. I mean, we have shelter, we have unlimited food, we have unlimited water, we have, amazing technological advancements. We have things that keep our brains active and going. You can argue, or, maybe, not a great thing, the technology aspects of things, but we have an amazing time in our civilization that we should all be like living in a perfect world where everybody's happy and loves each other, right? But we make conflict out of everything. We get entranced in the day-to-day stuff when we're so busy, we don't have time to do anything else. And it's just kind of our nature. So, I think, it really resonated with me when you mentioned it's selfish, but it's not selfish for you to focus on yourself, to make yourself better, to want to be happy. There's nothing wrong with that.
No. And what you described in your own journey is something that I always encourage my clients to start doing. Funnily enough, it's coming out of their head and into their intuition. So a lot of the work that I do with my clients is actually getting them out of their head, because this will always be a decision making on what's the safest, easiest thing that I could do that provides the most security. What you did for yourself was you started to listen to, I know I'm meant for more. I have this inner belief in myself. And what you didn't do was question yourself. Now, maybe you did at the start, but what you did was you kept following through and you listened to what your intuition was telling you and guiding you towards. That to me is what's called being value led. Following what's important to you, following what lights you up, following what makes you happy. Now, as a result of that, you're able to become a happier person because you're living in alignment with what's important to you. As a result of that, do you have kids, Dave? I think it's yeah.
Yeah, 3 kids.
3.
Yeah.
So now, because you're happier, you're not in a job that you feel like you should be in. You're in a job that you want to be in, a job that you've created, and you're more in control of you and your future. You are a better dad. I guarantee you that. Right?
100%.
Yeah. So here's where, come back to the mentality of when baby May was born, she was, I think, 2 months old. And I had done a really long day in coaching.
How many kids do you have total?
Just one.
Just one, okay.
Yeah, for now anyway. And she's only 10 months, so bear with me.
Need a little bit of pause between.
Bear with me. But there was one day I left my office at, I think, 8:30 at night. And my usual thing on a Wednesday was I always like to recharge and refuel. We live 3-minute walk to the lake. So I always like to jump in the lake, wash off the day and come back. Now, when that was about to happen, May was downstairs, absolutely bawling her eyes out. So she was crying. And I was like, oh, the mom guilt settled in. I can't do the thing now. And I started to immediately feel a bit of resentment. Not towards May, but just as the way things were happening. Now, my wife is amazing. I said to her, I'll be back in 10 minutes. Right? A lot of people, when I explain that to them, it's like, Jesus, that was a very selfish thing to do. Is it though? Let me explain. Had I not gone, I would have been at the end of my tether in terms of my patience, full day of coaching and working with other people and no opportunity to fill up my cup. And now she's crying, so I'm like, oh, come on, it'll be okay, let's go. So I'm not fully present, I'm not fully patient, I'm not fully myself, I'm not fully grounded. And let me look at the opportunity. I went down, jumped into the lake, washed it all off, came back and said, give me. Fully present, fully engaged, full of energy, fully realigned, and a much better parent. 10 minutes of putting yourself first gives you a whole, I suppose, aspect of being able to impact not just yourself, but your kids as well. And they're listening and they see it, right? So what do I want to model to me? That's what I always say. What do I want to model? And on the days where I'm like, oh, I shouldn't exercise and I shouldn't do this because I don't spend time with her, let's join her in. Bring her down to the lake, let her watch me. Bring her into the gym, let her watch me. That to me is we call it selfless. I call it our self-full. I call it, sorry, I'm confusing myself now. We call it I'm confusing myself. We call it selfish. I call it self-full, right? Because I'm filling up my cup. And when my cup is full, it overflows into everybody else. And that's a very powerful thing.
I think there's so many analogies there too. I mean, there's times where, the kids will be like, hey, need you do this, and I'm just not in the mode, and I'll go do something else, get my mind off of it, relax, and then come back to that situation and be like, hey, let's go nail it out, let's go do it. Yesterday is a good example. I was having a bad day and my son wrote, I think, a 7-paragraph dissertation of why he should be able to keep his computer in his room. And I was like, dude, let me just, I explained to you personally that I was not in a good state at the moment. It's been a really bad day, and you're coming to me with the 7-paragraph thing you want me to read. He's like, yeah, this is bad timing on my part. Go away. So, but
at least you give him options. Come back another day.
Right. I was like, listen, bad time right now is not the time, especially because you've been hitting me up on like text message for the past like week, bugging me about it. So, so chill. But but it was, but what happened, I went and, went to the garage for a bit and worked on my car, and then I came back, in, and I was fine. I listened to it, and it was a different, conversation that I would have had if I would have just stuck there and been annoyed at the time of doing it. Mm-hmm. And I think we have to, and it's funny because you can apply that analogy to a lot of things. Like if you ever wanted to send just a really crappy email to somebody because you're pissed at them, and it's your primitive brain that's like, tell them to F off and they suck, and I quit, and I'm going to smash this window, and then I'm going to go outside and I'm going to smash the car, and then I'm going to drive off, and then you give it some time. And I always have this rule of mine, and it's worked well, is if I'm really pissed at somebody and I want to do it through an email, which I normally would just call the person and talk to them. But if I'm really pissed at somebody, I want to do it through an email, I type the email out without the to. I type out everything I want to do, and I save it as a draft. And if I'm still feeling that same way tomorrow, I will send that email. And I've never sent that email before, right?
I'm sure you've got some interesting drafted emails.
This is my stress relief here is telling somebody to F off, but they never know it. So, there's somebody I've sent to Ben. It's not even, no, just kidding. It's those types of situations where we have to be cognizant that, there may be decisions that we make that aren't well thought out or hammered out. And I think we get so myopically focused on getting things done as fast as possible transactionally that you'd mentioned the overwhelming part of it that I think was really important. If you look at, I get this all the time in cybersecurity, you'll get a lot of people coming from college saying, oh my gosh, this industry is huge and it's just overwhelming. And how do I get to be, this or that or this? I'm like, whoa, just chill, learn what you can, apply what you're doing to your work and your job and your career, and continue to better yourself. And eventually you will know that. And by the way, you're never going to know everything. I mean, I learn something new every single day, and I've been in this industry for 25 years. So, it's the starting off small, biting off chunks that your brain will accept, making it a routine and habit. And then from there, pushing through. Right. And I think the pushing through is often the hard part for a lot of people, but the system that you're in, and I always say, like, Ben has a system that I'm in because, I report weekly, my measurements, my photos, my weight, my progress, anything that I'm struggling with. There's a system there designed to keep me focused on the long-term goals. And there have been times where I'm like, Ben, I don't think I'm making any progress, dude. He's like, hey, here's a side-by-side from 6 months ago today. He's like, call me if you have any issues. I'm like, oh shit. Yeah, you're right. It's completely different, but those types of things I think are really important for us to reinforce, to say, listen, if you want to do health and fitness, great, that's awesome, but it's not going to change overnight. You're not going to lose 50 pounds sustainably in a week. If you start keto, it's not going to miraculously change your life to where you're now, able to eat whatever you want to still, and still, keep the weight off. So, we have to look at this long term and say, well, how do I eat healthy? Yep. How do I get nutritional value out of the food that I'm eating versus all of this ultra processed stuff that we're dealing? It's high caloric intake, and doesn't fill us up. So how do we change our patterns of behavior slowly to get to that point? And I think, same thing on what you're talking about on mindset, especially folks that struggle with, depression and other areas. Like, you got to start off small and inch your way forward and have that positive reinforcement and a support system, I think, to really help you. And it's really cool what you're doing. I'm sure you have just so many different stories on the people that you've been able to help and just see that, which has got to be probably the most fulfilling thing and reward, because you came from such a low spot in life, three times, obviously, devastating. And then to be able to pull yourself out of that, but share experiences to help others. I mean, how do you got to feel great about those situations, right?
One of my clients come to mind. I was working with her for maybe 6 weeks, and she turned around and she said, "You'll never guess what happened today." I was like, "Go on." So she would have really not being able to kind of manage her emotions, and would get really short-tempered with her kids. And that's not how she wanted to be. And she came to me and she said, at the breakfast tables this morning, she said, my 8-year-old turned around and said to me, "I'm really glad Ciara is helping you because you're helping me." And that is something that if I ever feel like I'm not making an impact, I'm like, but I just helped that one person. And that's the day that if I'm like starting to kind of like doubt myself and my abilities or doubt the impact that I'm making, I'm like, yeah, but you just got into it to just help that one person and you've done that. And to tie into kind of what you were saying is the incremental small decisions that we make actually boil down to the fact that you have the power to make decisions, right? And you have options. And no matter what space that you're in and what area you're trying to kind of like work on, there are always options, and you have to understand that. You have to lean into your ability to have the power of your decision. And it's decisions made are your currency to your future. Like if you were to literally go, how can I predict my future? Look at the decisions that you've been making. And if the decisions that you've been making aren't giving you the future that you want, you have the power to change those decisions and make those choices and make them in a small way. And what I always say to myself on the days where things go out the window and everything goes tits up, win the moment in front of your face. And that's essentially what I've been doing for the last 15 years to get to where I am.
That's awesome.
to break it all down.
I think the biggest part on that is people don't actually realize that they have the decision. So whenever you empower them with the fact that actually I can decide to change this, they're like, oh shit, right, okay. And then that's the sort of gateway to everything else that comes along after it. Yeah,
it's powerful. Like I thought that this is just how my life is and that's just the way it's going to go and I'm just broken. But actually I realized that I gave myself the decision. You can have two options here. That's on my hospital bed. That's what I said to myself. That was the moment that changed the game for me because I started to realize the power of my decisions.
It's such an amazing journey once you experience the success there. Because once you experience success in there, you experience success in the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. And you kind of learn and train your brain to be, you started off with this at the very beginning of the podcast. You basically train your brain to be a positive tool for you versus, your brain kind of controlling you. Right. And I think it's those tools like, in resistance training, we talk about the mind muscle, body connection. And, a lot of people laugh at that if they haven't done resistance training before, but you're almost like you're like basically talking to your pecs, like you're figuring out how to contract it. You're talking to that muscle that you haven't done before. Mm-hmm. You got to like sweet talk it and figure out what's going on, and you develop that relationship with your chest and now you're lifting, and you can feel the chest move and you get more of a better, lift with it. And I know it sounds really weird to people that may not be doing resistance training, but
I was just like, it sounds like a bit of foreplay.
I was going to say it's getting a little. I was trying to turn it around. I was like, this is starting to sound sexual, so I'm going to go this way.
I'm glad that you have your own gym, Dave, because if you're having these like out loud conversations with your body parts, I think it'll get a bit
I was like, where am I going with this? Like, I gotta go this way. But you're flexing a tool that you haven't used before that you have at your disposal, and taking ownership that the condition that you're in right now is because of you and not training your mind to be for you, right? Yeah. And same thing you do with weight and things like that. I mean, yes, there are societal impacts. There are processed foods, the sugars, the contaminants, everything else that we're talking about. But at the end of the day, you can choose to do things differently that impact your life in a positive way. And I'll tell you, when I got into the fitness side of the house, it benefited every aspect of my life, from business to how efficient I was with my time management, with my kids. I started coaching my kids' basketball teams, being more actively involved with them and playing with them, wrestling more, getting them into lifting. My son now is into lifting. So, the positive benefits of taking control and spending time on myself, not the selfishness side, but focusing on me and my mental health, improved every aspect of my family, my businesses, and my life. And again, you have to take ownership of yourself. And it starts with the positivity of yourself that you can do this and anybody can do this. And you have to believe in yourself to be able to do that. It's a self-confidence thing that I think people really struggle with, about that positivity around themselves. And I just went on vacation for the first time. Well, not first time, but I went for the first time this year. And it was the first time in my life that I felt amazing taking my shirt off at the beach, right? Because I never had positive talk about myself. I always had, body dysmorphia. I never liked how I looked. I never was positive about myself. And it doesn't matter about the physique. It's you can look however you want to, but if you're confident in yourself and you love yourself, it's a different story, right? And And, I was at the beach and I just felt great. I felt awesome with the work I'd done, the time I spent with myself. The mindset side of the house is really kicking into all different aspects of my life.
Love that. And it just goes to show that, like, you are living proof of when you make that mind-body connection, just how powerful it can be.
Yeah, and you talk to your pecs. I'm the pec whisperer. So
have some foreplay with your pecs.
I'm gonna shake my left one, my right one, my left one.
Well, like, just to add a caveat to that, like, what we are as human beings from a mindset level and how we're wired is we're meaning-making machines. So every experience that we've ever experienced, everything that we go through in our day-to-day, we are consistently asking ourselves, what does this mean? And the thing to understand about this, and this is helping people lean into the power of choice, the meaning that you give your experiences dictates your beliefs. It creates what you believe about yourself. So say, for example, I text Ben and he doesn't text me back. I am now going, oh shit, what does this mean? And if I'm like, well, this means that I've fucked up or I've done something wrong or I'm not good enough or he doesn't like me, that's going to be my belief, right? Also, what I could make it mean is, well, maybe he's just busy. Right, and this is something I've experienced in my own life, and it might sound very trivial, but these little meanings that we give our experiences on a day-to-day, they either reinforce some really shitty beliefs that we have, or they actually challenge them. And that's at our grasp and opportunity all of the time. What meaning am I giving this? And it could be, what meaning am I giving me not taking action? It means that I'm a failure. No, it's not. It just means that you're not taking action. How can you actually change the game for yourself? What do you want it to mean? What do you want the meaning of your life to be? And that comes down to what is the story that you're going to tell yourself.
I will say that this is by far the fastest podcast that we have ripped through. Like, the time just went by so quick. So I'm so interested. I'm usually not interested in what Ben has to say, so it's really good. But I'm just so intrigued because there's so many parallelisms that I've experienced, hitting rock bottom and going to, a different type of extreme, that has taken years of kind of focusing my mindset on. So, it's really reinforced a lot of the success factors that we see time and time again, were people that make monumental changes based off of, communicating to themselves, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
Training their mind to be different in some way, shape, or form. And it's incredible because I learned a lot today, but also, what you do is really awesome. But I think this is the fastest that time has flown for me in the hour with Ben. It's usually like, man, it's like 40 more minutes to go.
That is not the way it usually is.
It goes quick.
I mean, I agree, Jimmy, and I could stand here and talk about this conversation all day, and I think I'm open to come on and have another conversation. But obviously, you and I have discussed coming and doing work with clients and whatever else. So this is the introduction to Ciara. I imagine that clients will definitely see more of her, and the podcast will definitely see more of her. I'll let you finish it out with what you think is the best start point for anybody who's struggling or anybody who's in a place that they feel like they need change.
Yeah.
And also how people can reach out to you and find you and all that good stuff as well.
Okay, so I'll start with the latter first. So you can find me at themindsetcoachirl across all social media platforms. So I'm most active on Instagram, so reach out to me there. I'm going to go with the basis of your theme. Hack your health. So how do we hack our mindset? So one of the things that I always get my clients to do straight away, okay, when they come working with me straight away, is I ask them to go onto Amazon and buy themselves an eye mask. Now, they're often like, but I've come to hack my mindset. Why are you telling me buy an eye mask? Buy an eye mask with a Bluetooth connection. And what I want you to do, and try this for 7 days, both of you, go onto YouTube, type in Reprogram Your Subconscious Mind. Find an 8-hour track that suits you and that you like the tone of and that it's aligned with how you want to feel. So you could pick one for confidence, self-love, self-trust, energy, whatever it is that you want, success, wealth, whatever. And I want you to put on your eye mask every night and listen to that track as you go to sleep. Now, why is that the starting point for everybody that works with me? When we were younger, between the ages of 0 and 7, our brain was acting on what's called a theta brainwave, which means that it was the exact same as being under hypnosis. So everything that we saw, everything that we heard, everything that we experienced just got soaked into our subconscious mind. That's our operating system now. That's our program, and it's kind of set for life. Now, how do we change that? How do we hack our subconscious mind to actually start working for us? There are 8 hours, however long you sleep. Maybe you don't sleep 8 hours, but the hours that you sleep are the most fundamental, most underutilized hours of your day. And if you are serious about changing your subconscious mind, you can start to do that while you sleep. Why is that powerful? Because your mind when you're asleep is on the theta brainwave. The theta brainwave is the time where your subconscious mind is most influenced. So you can actually rewire new programs into your subconscious mind. So that's what I get all my clients to start off with. Buy yourself, it's 25 quid is the one I use. I'll send Ben the link. He can throw it out to all of you guys. Put it in the show notes or whatever. 25 quid. Go onto YouTube, pick an 8-hour track and try it for 7 days and tell me you don't feel a difference. That's what I always start. So that's there, and then just focus on your inputs. What are you saying to yourself? How are you speaking to yourself? Because that's what you get out. So if you're being really shitty to yourself and you're focusing in on and giving a spotlight to all negativity, that's what you're going to get out. Lack of confidence, lack of belief. Focus on your inputs. What are you inputting into your mind? How are you speaking to yourself? Because if it's empowering you, get out confidence.
So for me, a recording of myself talking about having a relationship with my chest more, for 8 hours while I sleep. Yeah, and I'll loop for 8 hours.
And I bet you wake up and your chest will be like binging.
I can tell as well, Dave has already ordered the eye mask. He was doing that, mine is 100%. But yes, anyway, genuinely, Ciara, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ciara, thanks so much. Pleasure to meet you and
too,
for everything
Dave.
you've done. And amazing progress, amazing life story. And thank you for sharing your experiences, your struggles, and helping others. It's absolutely incredible. And have a lot of respect for folks like you. So thank you.
Right back at you. Thank you so much, Lex.
Thanks for everybody who's listening as well. You know, it's not
Thanks
just
so
us three here. And we'll see you next week.
Thanks a lot.
See you all later.